The Holy Gospel according to Mark, the 5th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came. When he saw him, he fell at Jesus' feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd followed Jesus and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who'd been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had. She was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, for she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that the power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" Jesus' disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" Jesus looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before Jesus, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they all came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When Jesus had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. When he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was, Jesus took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years of age. And at this they were all overcome with amazement that Jesus strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Today we have a story within a story. One story at the center of another. One story surrounding the other. Two stories, two women, two lives in great need of help and healing. The first woman is really, a 12-year-old girl. So sick that her father Jairus comes to seek out Jesus and to ask him for his help. This girl has a certain level of status, with her father being the leader of the synagogue. "Come, Jesus, she is about to die. Make my daughter well so she may live." So Jesus starts out on his way to help the girl, this almost woman of 12. But on his way, the crowd is thick. Deep within that crowd, surrounded by everyone, is a second woman, older, afflicted by a disease that causes her to bleed. She's been sick as long as that other little woman, the girl, has been alive. The second woman has been bleeding for 12 years. But this sick woman has no status in her time and place. She is what's considered the lesser gender, and to top it off, has a disease that marks her as unclean in her Jewish community of faith. She's outcast, she's on the edge, and yet she's caught up with Jesus in the middle of the pressing crowd. With Jesus' reputation as a healer firm in her mind, the woman with the illness, the unclean bleeding, reaches out with the belief that just the touch of his clothing will make her well. She feels the healing immediately. But she's no longer sick, no longer bleeding, no longer unclean. Jesus feels it immediately too. He senses some shift within him. He feels the transfer of power from his body into hers. "Who touched my clothes?" he asks. When a crowd of so many, Jesus wants to know who touched him. The disciples seem just a bit annoyed by this seemingly impossible question. But the woman, still close enough to hear Jesus ask who touched him, is full of fear and trembling. And she comes forward to confess and claim the healing she's just received. Is Jesus angry? Or is he just simply eager to know and connect with that person he's anonymously healed? The woman falls at his feet and she tells him the truth. "It was me. I touched you." And her courage, her honesty, her confession is recognized by Jesus as faith. And he proclaims she is well. Jesus sends her on her way with a blessing of peace and healing. But what about that first young woman to be, the 12-year-old daughter of the synagogue leader who was at the point of death? Weren't we following Jesus on his way to her before the story was interrupted? We barely have time to wonder, for even while Jesus is finishing his words with the woman who is now well, who is healed, who is no longer bleeding but clean, he is interrupted by people from the house of the synagogue leader. They've come to say, there's no point in Jesus coming to the house. They've come to announce to Jairus that his daughter is dead. It's all happened so fast. Does Jairus really hear the words? Jesus turns to Jairus and says, "Do not fear, only believe." So Jesus, Peter, James, John, Jairus, and the messengers of the household continue on to Jairus' home where his daughter lays. And when they arrive, there's a commotion. The mourning has already begun without delay. There is weeping, there is wailing. Jesus enters the house and tells them all to stop. It's unnecessary. The daughter of the young woman, the girl of 12, is not dead, but asleep. But Jesus' comment is not met with curiosity or with wonder, but with mocking and laughter. These folks know what dead is. This healer that Jairus has brought home, well, he's nothing less than a quack. But Jesus really pays no attention to these critiques. He sends everyone but the parents and his disciples out of the house. And in the room where the girl was laying, Jesus reaches out to her and he takes her hand and he tells her to get up. Well, his touch and his command hold the power to wake up the dead. And the girl gets up and walks around. And those who can see it can hardly believe it. They are amazed. But Jesus orders them, feed the girl. It's a sign of life, because the dead have no need of nourishment. We have a story within a story. One story at the center of another, one story surrounding the other. Two stories, two women, two lives in great need of being made well. And two women who in daily life would not at all be connected and whose stories would never intersect. One, a woman barely begun in life, still under her father's roof. Her father was a leader of the synagogue, providing her with some notice, some status in their Jewish community. The other woman, solidly into her adult years, with 12 years of sickness and suffering and financial hardship, a woman of no status other than being unclean due to the bleeding caused by her illness. In their time and place, these women are strangers to each other. It would be unlikely that these two lives would coincide in any way at all, and yet they do. They're connected by their suffering and their need. And the most important day in the stories of their two lives are forever bound together by their healer, by their Savior, by Jesus. Well, we don't know if they ever met, but it's not unreasonable to think that they will. The older woman, no longer unclean, would be allowed back in to join her community and worship at the synagogue. And surely we could imagine those two behind the curtain where the women sat. It would only be a matter of time, really, before their amazing stories were compared or overheard. And oh, what a connection that they would have now. Both made well by Jesus, both daughters, sisters, the age difference of no consequence, both children of God. Look around here for just a moment. Look past your family to those in front or behind, or maybe just a little further down the pew. In our time and place, in your daily lives, would all of your paths cross? Or would you be strangers? Even though you're here together, perhaps you're unsure of a name, or perhaps you're more familiar with the face than with the person the face belongs to. But how much time would it take to compare and share your stories and then find that you are connected in one ultimately meaningful way? You are claimed and beloved sons and daughters of God, who by grace has given you faith that Jesus Christ makes you well and gives you life. Christ makes us well, and Christ gives us life, not only to live unto ourselves, but to live together in community and to invite other would-be strangers into community with us. The young woman, once dead, is given life. Jesus restored her to her parents and to all those who wept and wailed over her loss. And the older woman, once suffering a disease that made her an outcast and unclean, is made well in more than her physical suffering. Jesus calls her daughter, and he sends her out to live as one healed, one belonging in the community. Each one of us at one time or another, and maybe even right now at this moment, have doubts about where we belong. We feel unclean. We fear being seen for who we are. We struggle with the broken places in our life, or we suffer from illness. But we are not alone. Christ meets us in those moments, in this moment, and he gives us a place with each other. Man or woman, boy or girl, 3 years old or 30, 18 years old or 80. In whatever ways our daily lives might seem to separate us, one ultimately meaningful truth connects us together forever. Our God in Christ on the cross knows what it is to suffer, what it is to bleed, to die, to be an outcast buried in a borrowed tomb. Jesus takes on what is ours to give us what is his: resurrection, healing, life, and community with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We come to this place each week, drawn together by our deep need to be made well, and the faith the Spirit gives us to trust in the promise that we are met here by Jesus. Each one of us together is met by Christ and made well through the Word, through the sacrament, and through the relationships he creates among us. And we don't need to fear or be alone or doubt our value or our place to belong. We don't need to, but we will. And Christ will continue to meet us. He will continue to meet us in those doubts and those fears. He will continue to draw us together, and we will be reminded again and again. Jesus heals us and gives life and gives us each other, strangers no more. So look around one more time and see if you can picture Jesus sitting between every person in the pew. Jesus sitting between you and the person next to you, holding the power to heal us and to connect us and to give us life. See Jesus and remember those who aren't here, those who have not yet to be welcomed into the fellowship of Christ, those who have not heard the story. Jesus has come to call them daughter and son too. Jesus connects all the hidden faces, all the hidden stories in the crowd. Jesus connects us with those we know and with those we don't. Jesus connects all of them to you and to me. So between us and our brothers and sisters in Tanzania, there's a connection in Jesus. And in that connection comes the healing of accessible and fresh water. And between us and our sisters and brothers who seek safety and refuge here in our borders, there's a connection with Jesus. In the connection come our prayers for the pain of separation of families, prayers for real change in systems and attitudes. Between us and our sisters and brothers who are hungry, homeless, unemployed is a connection in Jesus. And that connection comes the healing power of shelter and a meal, the life-restoring and hope-giving work of Family Promise, Saturday and Sunday evening meals, Feed Iowa First, ELCA World Hunger, Lutheran Services of Iowa. Countless lives and stories connected by Jesus, Jesus bringing healing and community and life. Jesus speaks to each of us and all of us in this worship, and he sends us out with these words to all the places we find ourselves in the coming week. Jesus says to you, to us all, do not fear, only believe. My child, get up, have something to eat. Daughters and sons, you are made well. Go in peace and be healed. Amen.